Kalyamardana Kamsani Sudana Kalyamardana Kamsani Sudana Kalyamardana Kamsani Sudana Kamalayada Nayana Gopala Kamkalayada Nayana Gopala Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari 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 Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Gopi Janamana Mabhi Bapaka Gopi Janamana Mohana Vyapaka Gopi Janamana Mohana Vyapaka Kovalayadala Nayala Gopala Kovalayadala Kovalayadala Nila Gopala Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Jai 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 Krishna Mukunda Murari 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 Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Bolo Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Jai Jai Krishna Mukunda Murari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare
Hari Bol Hari Bol Gora Hari Bol Gor Hari Bol Nitai Gora
Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Nitai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Gora Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol
Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Bolo Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Tagore. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Ki Jai. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Banachari. Yamuna Tira. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Radha Rani ki jai, Maharani ki jai,
Rani ki jai, Maharani ki jai.
Radha Rani ki jai, Maharani ki jai,
Rani ki jai, Maharani ki jai.
Bolo Barsanawai ki jai, jai jai, Barsanawai ki jai, jai jai, Barsanawali ki jai, jai jai, Barsanawali ki jai, jai jai, Radha Rani ki jai, Maharani ki jai, Radha Rani ki jai, Maharani ki jai, Barsanawali ki jai, jai 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 jai, Bolo Thakurani ki jai, Harivaya ki jai, Thakurani ki jai, Hari Pyari ki jai, विश्वभानु दुलारी की जय 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 बोलो
विश्वभानु दुलारी की जय जय जय
बोलो विश्वभानु वाली की जय 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 बोलो
विश्वभानु दुलारी की जय जय जय
विश्वभानु वाली की जय जय जय
विश्वभानु दुलारी की जय जय जय
विश्वभानु वाली दुलारी की जय जय जय
विश्वभानु
दुलारी की जय 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 विश्वभानु दुलारी की जय जय जय
विश्वभानु दुलारी की जय जय जय
गौरांगी की जय हे मांगी की जय
रानी की जय मांगी की जय
गौरांगी की जय हे मांगी की जय
रानी की जय मांगी की जय
व्रज कुमारी की जय 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 बोलो
व्रज कुमारी की जय जय जय
बोलो व्रज राज कुमारी की जय जय जय
बोलो
बोलो
व्रज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज राज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज राज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज राज कुमारी की जय जय जय
ओ व्रज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज राज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज कुमारी की जय जय जय
व्रज रानी की जय व्रज देवी की जय
रानी की जय महादेवी की जय
व्रज रानी की जय व्रज देवी की जय
रानी की जय व्रज देवी की जय
गेह वर वन वाली की जय 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 बोलो
वरवाली की जय जय जय
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
बोलो हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
ए बोलो हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा
कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे
व्रजरानी की जय महारानी की जय
रानी की जय महारानी की जय
राधा रानी की जय, महारानी की जय। बोलो बरसन वाली की जय जय जय। बोलो
बरसन वाली की जय जय जय।
बोलो बरसन वाली की जय जय जय।
बोलो बरसन वाली की जय जय जय।
बरसन वाली की जय जय जय। बरसन वाली की जय जय जय। बरसान वाली की जय जय जय। बोलो हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे। ये बोलो हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम। हे बोलो हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम। हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
बोलो हरे कृष्णा कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम राम हरे हरे।
जय गोविंद जय गोपाल, जय गोविंद जय गोपाल।
जय गोविंद जय गोपाल, जय गोविंद जय गोपाल।
बोलो जय गोविंद जय गोपाल, जय गोविंद जय गोपाल।
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 बोलो जय गोविंद जय गोपाल, जय गोविंद जय गोपाल।
जय गोविंद जय गोपाल, जय
Bolo Jai Govinda Jai Gopal, Jai Govinda Jai Gopal.
Jai Govinda Jai Gopal, Jai Govinda Jai Gopal.
Bolo Jai Govinda Jai Gopal, Jai Govinda Jai Gopal. Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Hare, Hare Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Hare Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna, Radhe Krishna. Sitaram, 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 Sitaram.
Sitaram, 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 Sitaram.
Bolo Sitaram, 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 Sitaram.
Sitaram, 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 Sitaram.
Bolo Sitaram, 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 Sitaram.
Sitaram, 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 Sitaram.
Lakshmi Narayan, Lakshmi Narayan, Lakshmi Narayan, Lakshmi Narayan.
Sitaram, Sitaram.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, Arati Ke Soba.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, Arati Ka Shobha.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, Arati Ke Soba.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, Arati Ka Shobha.
Gorangera Rotik Soba, Jaya Jaya Manaloba.
Gaurangera Arati Shobha, Janam Janam Manaloba.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, Arati Ke Soba.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, Arati Ka Shobha.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Badaki Nitaya Chan Vanengadadhara.
Kivadaki Neni Tai Chan Bamigadadhara.
Nikate Advaita Shili Vasadara.
Nikate Advaita Srini Vashachhatradara.
Kiba Jayo, Jaya Gora Chande, आरती के शोभा की
जय जय गौरचंद्र आरती को शोभा
गौरंगेरा दीन शोभा जय
गौरंगेरा आरती शोभा जन्म जन्म मानलोभा
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Shina Chengora Chang Ratna Singha Sane
Kiva Bashi Achen Gorachan Ratna Singha Sane
Arati Gorena Rama Hari Deva Gane
Arati Karena Brahma Adi Devi Gane
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Bolo Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Adhikari Shamaradulaya
Kiva Narari Adhikari Chamaradulaya
Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu Gosa Adigaya Sanjaya Mukunda Vasu
Gosha Adigaya
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Shankar baje ganta baje, baje baje karatala.
Shiva Shankar baje, घंटा बाजे, बाजे करताला.
Madhura midanga baje, Maramara sala.
Madhura midanga baje, Paramarasala.
Shanka baje, kanta baje, Madur 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 baje.
Shanka baje, घंटा बाजे, मधुर 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 बाजे.
Shanka baje, kanta baje, Madur 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 baje.
शंख बाजे, घंटा बाजे, मधुर 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 बाजे.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Koti Chandajini Vadana Ujvala.
Baba go koti Chandrajini Badana Ujjala.
Dala Deshe Manamala Kori Jala Mala.
Galag deshe banamala Kari jalamala.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Shiva Shukanarada Preme Gada Gada.
Kiva Shiva Sukona Radha Preme Gada Gada.
Akati Vinoda Deke Gorara Sampada.
Bhakti Vinoda Deke Gurara Sampada.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Oh Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare
Bolo
Hare
Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Krishna 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 Hare.
Krishna 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 Hare.
Bolo Krishna 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 Hare.
Oh Krishna 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 Krishna
Bolo
Hare.
Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Krishna 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 Pahima.
Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Rakshama.
Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Rakshama.
Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahima.
Krishna 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 Taima.
Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Rakshama.
Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Rakshama.
Bolo Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahima.
Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Krishna 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 Hare.
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 Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Krishna 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 Pahima.
Krishna 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 Tahima.
Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Rakshama.
Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Ram Raghav Rakshama.
Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahima.
Krishna 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 Tahima.
Bolo Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Krishna Keshava Pahima.
Krishna 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 Rakshama.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha.
Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha.
Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha.
Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha.
Ito Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
To Nisingha Parato Nisingha.
Yato Yato Yahamitato Nisingha.
Yato Yato Yamitato Nisingha.
Tahi Nisingha Hidaye Nisingha.
Bahir Nisingha Ida Nisingha.
Shina Madin Saranam Prapade
Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade
Tabakar Kamala Bare Nakam Adhuta Singham Tadita Hiranyakashipu Tanubingham Kesavajita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare
Tabakara Kamala Bare Nakham Adbhuta Shingam Dalita Liranakashipu Tanubhingam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadesha Hare Jai Jagadesha Hare Jai Jagadesha Hare
Kesavajita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare
Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadesha Hare Jai Jagadesha Hare Jai Jagadesha Hare
Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev
Jaya Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev Narasimhadev Jaya Narasimhadev
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hari Bol Hari Bol Gora Hari Bol Nita Gora Hari Bol
Nitai Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol
Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikachara Astatara Satara Shri Shrimad's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shikoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narottamam devim saraswatim yasam tato jayam mudirayet. Om aganyatimirandasya gyananjana salakaya chaksurun militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Gurun Shri Jitaha Pachakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Bisaka Nivitam Sa He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Bacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantha Raja Ki Jai. Bolo Shri Krishna Bhagavan Ki Jai. Shri Radha Nilamadava Ki Jai. Jagannath Subhadra Baladevi Ki Jai. Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Subhadra Baladeva Ki Jai. Lakshmi Nrsimha Dev Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guru Amga. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantha Raja Ki Jai. Chapter 9, verse number 14. Satatam Kirtayanto mam chitantascha dritavrata namasyantascha mam bhakta nitya yukta upasate. So this is a very wonderful verse, the 9th chapter, 14th verse of Bhagavad Gita, and it says, always chanting my glories. Now this is Krishna talking himself. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So we can repeat this. Please repeat. Always chanting my glories. Endeavoring with great determination. Bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, our Gurudev. The Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. When the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme Lord, praising His holy name, His eternal form, His transcendental qualities, and His uncommon pastimes. One has to glorify all these things. Therefore, a Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who's attached to the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmajyoti, or the light emanating from the body of Lord Krishna, is not described as Mahatma in the Bhagavad Gita. He is described in a different way in the next verse. The Mahatma is always engaged in different activities of devotional service, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing and chanting about Vishnu, not a demigod or a human being. That is real devotion. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevanam, Archanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. That is the 9 types of devotion. Such a Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end of life the association of the Supreme Lord in any of the 5 transcendental rasas. To achieve that success, he engages all activities, mental, bodily, and vocal, everything in the service of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. That is called full Krishna consciousness. In devotional service, there are certain activities which are called determined, such as fasting on certain days, like the 11th day of the moon, Ekadasi, and on the appearance day of the Lord, Janamastami. All these rules and regulations are offered by the great acharyas for those who are actually interested in getting admission into the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the transcendental, eternal world. The Mahatmas, great souls, strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they are sure to achieve the desired result. As described in the 2nd verse of this chapter, not only is this devotional service easy, but it can be performed in a happy mood. One does not need to undergo any severe penance or austerity. He or she can live this life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or a sannyasi or a brahmachari, in any position and anywhere in the world, he or she can perform this devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul. Gaur Premanandi, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Grantha Raja Ki Jai. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is a wonderful verse in Bhagavad Gita, pointing to what is our real destiny in life. Destiny means what you're doing now that will determine your success in the future. We are all under the subject of karma, and there's good karma and bad karma. And then there's karma that has no reaction. Good and bad karma will force you to take birth again to get the results. But there's a third type of karma called akarma, where there's no negative or positive result. There's only transcendental benefit, which means Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyakvadeham punarjanma naiti mameti sarjana. This verse says, one who understands the transcendental nature of Krishna's, Lord Krishna's appearance and activities, does not, upon leaving the body, take birth again, but comes directly back to me, Krishna says. So this verse also says the same thing. If we can make our culture Krishna consciousness in this lifetime. Now, what does culture mean? Culture means how you do things. How you eat, how you sleep, how you mate, how you defend, how you chant, how you dance. All these things, how you dress, how you think, how you bathe, all these things are parts of culture. So if we practice Krishna culture in this lifetime, without any extraneous activity, in other words, you don't have to retire into a cold, dank, dark cave in the Himalayas and meditate 24 hours a day. You don't have to do any tapasya. You simply have to do your own regular activities, but with the goal of pleasing Krishna, with the instructions of bona fide gurus, shiksha and diksha gurus. Then, without changing anything in your life, except your culture, you will become liberated at the moment of death. This was the ancient culture of India, Bharat, not Hindustan, and not the Hindus. Those are Arabic words. They have nothing to do with Vedic Dharma. Vedic Dharma says that the name of religion in Bharat was Sanatan Dharma. Now, dharma means what you're obliged to do. So a husband is obliged to take care of his family. The wife is obliged to raise the children, to engender the children, raise the children, feed them nicely, and also work hard to maintain the family. So everybody has duties. That's just Dharma. But Sanatan Dharma is what you do eternally to please Krishna. There's a big difference between Dharma and Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal. So there's a difference between your temporary duties, going to work, bringing the money home, cooking, cleaning, all these things, and Sanatan Dharma, which is chanting Hare Krishna, regularly hearing this Bhagavad Gita spoken by genuine devotees. That means regularly, should be every day actually, and so that you stay on track, and eating only Mahaprasadam. So you have to learn how to offer your food to a small altar of Krishna in your house and pray that the Lord accepts this humble offering. It should be only vegetarian food, no lasan, no piyaz, right? No coffee, no tea, no medical marijuana, none of that junk. Just clean, simple vegetables, fruits, nuts, grains, lentils, and so forth. Then Krishna will accept your offering with your sincere prayer. Please, Lord, accept this offering. I've made it according to your taste, not my taste. I didn't put lasan, I didn't put piyaz, I didn't put any of these stinky vegetables. Not all vegetables are good, right? Like, for example, arsenic is a vegetable. It's a type of green, right? But it's no good for you. So when it says vegetables, it doesn't mean anything. It means only those things that Krishna accepts. And Krishna only accepts things that are sattvic. He doesn't accept anything that is rajasic and tamasic. So living in the mode of goodness, or sattva guna, is the stepping stone to the spiritual world, to eliminating all your problems in life, political, economic, social, family, military, all these problems you get are completely eradicated when you practice Krishna culture, the original culture of Bharat. And therefore, and by the way, India also is a name given by the British. When Christopher Columbus sailed from Italy looking for a new way to get to the Far East, because everyone wanted to come to India previously to pillage the riches of India. India was a very rich place 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. It was a very, very wealthy place. But people knew this, and they would try and come and steal all the riches of India. And they did a good job of it. They did a good job of it. The Muslims did a good job. The Mongols did a good job. The Iranians made a good job. The British made a good job of robbing India of its riches. Right? Now, why was India so wealthy? One example is the temple in South India, Padmanabham. Padmanabham, recently, some years ago, they discovered that there were hidden caves under the temple, and they discovered at least thousands of pounds of pure gold. And they had to hide it. When you have so much gold, you have to hide it. Just like if you have a lot, if the Indian ladies have a lot of gold jewelry that they wear on Diwali to show it off, don't do it. Don't do it, because it only attracts the thieves. There was a devotee that lives very close to here, and his wife put on all her gold jewelry and showed it on the internet. And guess who saw it? Thieves. So they started, they parked the car near their house, and they watched the movements of the family. And they were looking at the video, and they found out what Diwali is and how Indian women and men go out and celebrate it. So they waited for Diwali. When the family left the house to go to a Diwali celebration, they robbed the house. They knew there was gold in the house. They went in the house, and they took $180,000 of gold jewelry from that house. This is a true story. And when the man came here, the husband came here, he was almost crying, and he told me what happened. I said, why you keep the jewelry, so much jewelry in your house? He said, I don't know. He said, my wife didn't trust the bank. So, anyway, ladies, don't hoard gold. It's dangerous. People will kill you for it, right? So anyway, Padmanabha temple had hundreds and billions of dollars, trillions of dollars worth of gold. Now, I don't know what happened to it. Probably the government took it. But India was a very, very wealthy place before. So the whole point is that India was wealthy because of its culture. And we must keep that culture alive. We must teach that culture to our children. For the last 2 to 3 generations in India, the passation of that culture to the children from the older generation has broken down. And the last break was outside, what do you call that? When you work all night long for the Americans. Outsourcing, yeah. Outsourcing was the last stage of destroying Indian culture. So we have to go back to that original culture. Now, there's a very interesting point. It's easier to follow Sanatana Dharma in America today than it is in India. Because in India, all the establishment of the government, the school, the whole school system, everything is broken. They're teaching young kids to become atheists and to lose their culture. In the 1930s, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's guru, sent a very highly cultured devotee to London to start a temple. And he gave him a reference of a British lord who was previously in India and ruling India, and then he went back, he retired and went back to London. So this devotee went to see this English lord, and he explained to him Krishna consciousness. And the English lord looked at him and just laughed. He said, you know, my dear friend, I got to tell you the truth. Your best people come to London. Your best youth come to London to get an education. And what is the education? It's the opposite of what you're teaching. You're teaching no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit activities outside of marriage. And we're teaching eat meat, drink alcohol, gamble, and philander. And your kids are coming here to learn that from us. So don't think that you're going to come here and teach us to give those things up, when your best people are coming here to learn how to do those things. Would you deny it today? You know, amongst the Hindus, by the way, we shouldn't even use the word Hindu. It's not a Sanskrit word. Amongst the followers of Sanatana Dharma, 50% eat meat all the time, in the house, outside the house, all the time. And another 25% only eat meat outside the house, not in the house. Therefore, amongst the Sanatana Dharmis, there's only 25% that actually follow their religion. 75% today are not following at all. And they're not ashamed of it. I see it all the time. I go to Safeway, and I see very respectable Indian ladies putting meat in their basket and going to the checkout. You know, so this is very unfortunate. One time a man said to me, Hari Vilas, I'm not going to come anymore to hear your lectures. I said, really? He said, why is that? He said, every time I come, you say, don't eat the meat. So I don't want to hear this anymore. So I like to eat meat. I said, well, I'm very sorry. Now, you know what happened to that person? He bought a Subway store. And recently they called me to their house. They hadn't talked to me for years. They called me to their house to do New Year's Eve puja on New Year's Eve day, right, to start the year off. So I was a little surprised, but I went, and I did the whole ceremony. And during the pravachan, I looked right at my friend, and I told him, no gambling, no intoxication, no philandering, and especially no meat. I said, you should immediately sell your Subway store and give it up. And they all looked at me. The whole family was there. There were like 20 members of the family. They're all looking at me because that's their business, right? And then finally, my old friend said, you know, Harivilas, I almost died. I said, really? What happened? He said, I had a heart attack. He's relatively, he's 50 years old, right? I said, you had a heart attack. He said, what do you think caused the heart attack? And he just looked at me. I said, it's the meat. You understand? I was warning you all these years. Of course, you stopped coming to the classes for many years. But I told you, give it up. I said, now I'm telling you again, give it up immediately. Sell that store. That's all pop. It's all sin. Did he listen to me? No. So that's like a man once, his name was Kalidas. Kalidas was a real rascal. He was sitting on a tree branch, cutting it off with a saw. And some man came to him and said, hey, Kalidas. He said, you should stop doing that. The branch is going to break. You're going to fall down. Maybe you break a bone or something. He said, what do you know? Go away. You don't know you can't tell me what to do. He said, okay. So he walked away, and then he heard this branch break, and he heard Kalidas scream, so he came back and said, what happened? He said, I broke my arm. He said, I told you so. He said, oh, that's your fault. You shouldn't have said anything. It cursed me. So this is the symptom of a fool. A fool will never accept good advice. They'll always reject good advice and follow their own whimsical nonsense and ruin their life. It's like alcohol, like a person addicted to gambling, like a philanderer who can't stop abusing women, or these abusers, anyway, foolish people will never accept good advice, and it's dangerous. It's life-threatening when they follow their whims. Okay, so in this verse today, Krishna, speaking to Arjuna, is promising Arjuna and anybody else who hears this verse that he will guarantee they go back to Godhead. They attain eternal life. The other day, some lady called me up, and she asked me, what is your belief? I heard about your Krishna consciousness and so forth. And after a long discussion, where I explained everything to her, she said, is there one thing you want me to remember from this conversation? She said, I'm very pleased by everything you said, but tell me one thing that I should remember. I said, okay. And this was an American lady. And I said, you should be absolutely sure today and for the rest of your life that you have an eternal soul. No matter what happens to your body, it will never kill you. You will always be existing, either in this body or another body. Just like in this life, you started out microscopically. Would you deny that you were a little sperm at one time, coming from your father to your mother? Would you say, no, that was not me? Would you say that? She said, no, I can't say that. So I accept that. So you see, you began microscopically, and you developed, and now you're 50 years old, and you're asking me all these questions because you're not sure about what's going to happen to you in the future. But I'm telling you right now, if there's one thing you should remember from our discussion, you have an eternal soul. Now, if you accept that you have an eternal soul, then I'm going to ask you a question. I said, do you accept that you have an eternal soul? She said, yeah, I accept it. I think you convinced me. I said, therefore, there's a conclusion once you accept that you must now do something to feed your soul and not just feed your body. And I said to her, do you know what the food for your soul is? She said, no. I said, it's serving God without any material motive, simply to please God. It's called Bhakti, devotional service. Now you come to our temple, and I'll teach you how you can be liberated in this lifetime from the cycle of birth and death. And she said, I'm going to have to think about that. I said, okay, we can't force you. You have to make that determination yourself. But if you decide to come, I guarantee you, I'll teach you how to liberate yourself from the cycle of birth and death, and your family, and your relatives, and anyone else that knows you. She said, that's amazing. I said, well, it's amazing, but most people don't believe it. If you believe you have an eternal soul, then that's the beginning of your freedom from the cycle of birth and death. Now you learn how to feed that soul by your actions to please God, and then He will liberate you from the cycle of birth and death. And Krishna promises that in the 4th chapter, 9th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so this science of Krishna is so profound that very few people in India are interested in it. Where it comes from, you would think they'd be proud of the Bhagavad Gita. But no, they're more interested in C++, JavaScript, this thing, that thing, how to make money on the stock market, how to flip houses and become a millionaire. They're not really that interested in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, whenever we begin the class, a whole bunch of people walk out. Say, why? Because they think that the darshan is important, not the pravachan. But actually, the pravachan is more important than the darshan. Because then you'll understand that you don't come to have darshan. You come so that Krishna can see you. Your face in this place in front of the Lord. And the question he has is, when and what are you going to do for me? Just like if you go to see President Joe Biden, he's going to say, why did you come here? Did you come here to do something for me? Or did you come here to get something from me? If you say, no, sir, I came here to give you something. He said, what is it? So I'm going to give you a donation for your re-election. Oh, very good. Thank you very much. You see, he's very pleased. But when we come here, it's so Krishna can see us. And see what? See us give to Him. Give Him our choice words and prayers. Dance for Him. Chant for Him. Offer some dakshina to Him. And pray to Him. And glorify Him by the choice words and reciting Vedic mantras and so forth. It's to please the Lord. That's why we come here. We don't come here to see the Lord. If you're the seer, that means you're the enjoyer. If you're the seen, that means you're the servant. So we come to be the servant of the Lord. That's the meaning of real darshan. Krishna is having darshan of you and seeing what you're doing for Him. So, and this would be your desire also. If your relatives come to see you, it's not so they ask you for a loan. It's so you offer them nice food, you offer them sweet words, you offer them a happy visitation, and you wish them well, and so forth. See? So we have to know what is actual darshan. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Yes, Prabhu. Let's say it in the microphone so everyone can hear.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Guru Maharaj, I have learned from you that one stops learning if he stops inquiring from a self-realized soul. So if it's appropriate, I'll ask a question. Here in the
Speak louder into the microphone.
Here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada begins by stating that a Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man.
Now, ordinary man means someone who is adama, not a devotee, just a sense gratifier. Go ahead.
So I believe Srila Prabhupada is referring to one of the politicians who had a title by that name. Maybe that's what he's alluding to.
Yeah, like say Pandit Nehru. He was not a pundit. He was a nundit. You know. Go ahead.
So sometimes we see similar criticism extended to, um, gurus who even in organized religion who come even from a bona fide sampradayas, right? And to that effect, in one of the purports of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada says that one should be careful not to take initiation by this consideration, that consideration. One of them he mentions ecclesiastical consideration as well, right? And then sometimes there is some criticism in that regard as well, like rubber stamping someone as a guru. So as a neophyte, those who are associated with an institution, it's just almost people just tend to go by that ecclesiastical consideration just because an institution.
It's called a family guru.
Right.
It's by tradition that they take initiation by certain gurus who may just be doing pujas just for money, to maintain their family, not really teaching anything. Go ahead.
And then
what is your question?
the question is that is extended even to, it seems, even to institutions also. So how does one be very careful in approaching someone for direction, instructions?
It's very simple. If someone is teaching you how to love God, and how do you love someone? By serving them, right? So that's how you would know if it's a bona fide religion. If they're teaching you to love God, if they're teaching you to strap a bomb on your abdomen and go into a public place and blow it up and kill people, and promising you 72 virgins in Jannah if you do it, that's nonsense. There's nothing to do with love of God. How can you love of God when you love God's creatures, God's children, right? So, or if someone says, well, look, you give me 1, I give you back 10. That's a cheater. No one can give you back 10 if you give them 1. No bank can give you that. It's a cheater who's saying things like that. Those are all businessmen. They're dressed like sadhus, but they're just businessmen. And you can tell because they have gold chains and they're driving a BMW and they're big fat guys and they're telling funny stories and things like that. And people go, oh, Gurudev. And they give their money. And then they find out he killed somebody like Asaram Babu, or he's a philanderer like Nityananda, or he's smuggling gold into India. And he's, the man gods in India is a joke. And you know who loves them the most, the man gods? The Muslims and the Christians. Because every time a man god is revealed to be a rascal, it discourages the Bharatiyas and encourages the Muslims and the Christians. And by the way, maybe not the parents, but the children of the parents convert to either Christianity or Islam because of this nonsense that's going on, right? So whoever is going to teach you genuine love of Krishna, and when you love someone, you're ready to sacrifice everything for that person. Now, if it's a mundane person, it's a wasted sacrifice. If it's Krishna, it's the best thing you ever can do. Because Krishna says, Sarvadharmam purityaja mamekam saranam vraja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo moksisyami ma suchaha. Hey Arjuna, give up all your fabricated phony dharmas and surrender unto me. And he says, only unto me. He doesn't say sarva deva. He doesn't say surrender to all the devatas. He says only unto me. Sarvadharmam parityaja mam ekam means only to me. Now, he says, if you do this, I guarantee you that I will deliver you from all your karmas and liberate you, and you will come back to me. This is his promise in Bhagavad Gita. This is why the Sri Vaishnavas, this is one of their mantras that they have to recite every day. It's mantra from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 18th chapter, 66th verse. So we should believe what Krishna is telling us, right? The whole question of knowledge is not what you study, but who you have faith in is a bona fide teacher. Now, who's going to teach you how to love God, because that is the ticket out of the material world of birth and death. And you go back to the eternal world where there's no birth, there's no old age, there's no disease, there's no death. Now, how do we know this? Well, you can read the Bible, you'll have some hazy, let's say, idea about this. You can read the Quran, you'll get another hazy idea. They do talk about, how you can go back to God, but they don't explain who God is exactly. They don't explain what's going on in the spiritual world, what it looks like. Nothing. There's no information like that. That information can only be found in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's no other scripture in this whole universe that explains clearly what's going on in the spiritual world, who is Krishna, what does he look like, what is he like, what he doesn't like. Muhammad never saw Allah. He only heard something from Allah, and he only saw maybe the Archangel Gabriel. Jesus talks about his father, was with his father before birth, before coming to the material world, but he doesn't explain exactly who his father is. That's why the modern Christians, they confuse Jesus as being the Father, whereas clearly it says in the Bible that Jesus is the Son of God. So they don't have any knowledge of who God is. They only have knowledge of who the Son is. Then in Judaism, they also don't have any clear understanding of what's going on in the spiritual world and who is God. In fact, they forbid you in their religion to say the name of God. They forbid you. Because it's so sacred, they say you should not repeat his name. But we are chanting Krishna's name every day. In fact, we chanted that one mantra today. Krishna, 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 hey. See? So when you develop love for Krishna, you can never stop talking about him. Just like anybody who developed love for Trump, they never stopped talking about him. They got into arguments with their family members, everyone. They couldn't stop talking about Trump. So when you love someone, you talk about them all the time. You don't stay silent. So Ramana Maharshi, his idea was that the ultimate self-realization, the ultimate supreme goal of life is silence. This is nonsense. When you love someone, you talk about them, right? So therefore, the Alvars, they didn't remain silent. They wrote beautiful prayers glorifying, just like the Mukunda Mala Shotram. It's a beautiful prayer glorifying Krishna by an Alvar, right? So we see that there's a lot of misinformation in this world. You will only be able to come to grips with all that misinformation by hearing Bhagavad Gita spoken by genuine devotees and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, we're going to be, let me explain something very interesting. The scientists, their greatest achievement is weapons of mass destruction. The IT people, like you and many other people here, the IT people's greatest production is weapons of mass distraction. And the politicians' best product is weapons of mass misinformation, right? And so you see, you go down the line, all the famous types of people in this world are misleading everybody, right? And the experts in sociology and psychology, their greatest thing, like the psychologists like Freud, he admits that being sexually frustrated is the cause of mental problems. And what is his solution? Have free sex. The one thing that is causing the problem, he says, now let's free it up completely. Right? So that's not a solution. And then the social engineers, their best product is gender neutrality. If you're a little girl and you think you're a boy, you can go use the boys' bathroom. And if you're a little boy and you think you're a girl, you can use the girls' bathroom. Everything, these people, their best products are things that screw people's lives, that mess up their lives with all misinformation. See? So to get out of this forest, this jungle of misinformation, you have to hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam on a regular basis, because there's overwhelming misinformation out there. And nowadays, you have these weapons of mass distraction. Just like, for example, if you go to Costco, there was one man that went to Costco. His wife told him, go to Costco and buy some bananas. They're cheap there. He said, okay. So he went to Costco. But to get to the bananas, he had to walk through the whole store. It's all the way in the back. Before he got to the bananas, he bought a lawnmower, he bought a rake, he bought a new computer, and a special computer watch, right? And he forgot to buy the bananas. So he goes home, and his wife said, did you get the bananas? He said, oh my God, he said, I forgot. But I got a new this and a new that. You see, now why did that happen? Because Costco uses very, very subtle psychology to organize their store. That's why they put the vegetables, the mangoes, all those things, way in the back of the store. You have to walk through the whole store to get there. They do that on purpose. Now, the casinos do the same thing. The casinos, they use Freudian psychology to get people to enter the casino and gamble. And they're very successful out of it. You know. And the politicians, again, they also use Freudian psychology. And especially the businessmen. Like, for example, if you see an advertisement for a car, let's say a Honda. So there's some man in a convertible Honda driving up a mountain, and there's a girl, a blonde-haired, beautiful woman in a bikini, hitchhiking. And he stops and looks at her, and she looks at him, and they smile at each other. And she jumps into the car, he puts his arm around her, and they keep going up the mountain. So the subliminal message there is, if you want the girl, you got to buy the Honda. So when he goes past the Honda dealership, he goes in there and buys the Honda because he's been programmed to think that if he wants that girl, he's going to have the Honda. So you see these advertisements for muscle cars, right? You know what a muscle car is? You know, it's a big pickup, right? 6-wheel pickup. And you see a beautiful girl with a bikini on, standing with a big smile, pointing at the muscle car. Have you ever seen those advertisements? Yes? Yes? Yeah. So this is Freudian psychology.
It's interesting when you mentioned about politician. I recently observed on the Twitter, there's a lot of accounts. So in India, we have this Bhajapa government, right? BJP. So they have like young girls now. They are canvassing for them, and you see like in their feed, it's just very unusual. You traditionally have never seen like young girls so active in politics, and these are not like even leaders, but for canvassing, they're using young girls to advertise. So even in politics, it's the same psychology they are applying.
Exactly. And like in India, again, before people were watching television there, hardly anyone had a television, especially the poor people. Right? How did they get the Indians to watch television almost 24 hours a day? They put the Ramayana first, and then the Mahabharata second, right? And people stopped. Everyone stopped in the afternoon when the Ramayana came on. The taxi drivers stopped and everything. They all were looking at the television. And then little by little, they switched to Bollywood movies. And the movies are now not different than Hollywood movies. Hollywood and Bollywood is the same thing. And it's completely corrupted the whole culture of India. People are watching. I went to one family, and I walk in, they had a 96-inch television screen, and it was on all day long. And when I sat down, I said, how you doing? He said, they kept looking at the screen. Okay, how are you? I couldn't believe it. I mean, years before I went to their house, they didn't have the television, nothing. Now, they were glued to the television. What's the name of the television in India? Doordarshan, is that it? Yeah. Yeah, well, they had the special channel, Indian channel. You have to pay for it, right? And that's completely ruined the culture of people. Right? And they did it in a very, very subtle way by first showing Mahabharata and Ramayana. You see. So we're in a dangerous place now. They have weapons of mass destruction, these cell phones, this internet connection. You know, when your kid locks their door in their room and is up all night long playing video games and talking to all kinds of strange people, you know, and this one lady came and said, Prabhu, I need you to talk to my son. I said, why? He said, the father came, he said, my son has become a Muslim. I said, really? I said, how old is he? He's 18, he said. He was good up until 16. And then he started looking on the computer, and some Muslim man started preaching to him, and now secretly he's going to the mosque, and he's following all the rules. And then he told me recently, don't talk to me about Hinduism. I'm a Muslim now. I said, well, it's only your fault. He said, why is that? I said, you're the one that gave him the computer. You're the one that lets him close his door in his bedroom. And then he goes on the computer. He can meet anybody. He can meet some of the worst people in the whole world on that computer. It goes all over the world. So this is the dilemma, Prabhu. And we have to wake up to the reality. And you're going to lose the battle unless you become proactive about bringing your kids here on a regular basis. We have so many programs for kids. And bringing yourself. See, when the kid sees you watching television, you say, do your homework now, and chant Hare Krishna also. He'll say, see, now I know how this whole works now. Here's why he and my mom are watching the television, and they want me to do my homework and chant Hare Krishna. Doesn't work. The parents have to organize the culture in the home. That's Sanatan culture of the home. And the thakur of the house should not be the computer or the television. The thakur of the house should be Radha and Krishna. And the whole culture should be based on worshiping the deities, hearing about Krishna, talking about Krishna, serving Krishna, loving Krishna. That should be the culture. I rest my case. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Are there any other questions? Okay, Haribol, thank you. Take rest and wake up early and chant Hare Krishna. Yes. You tell your kid to do his homework while you're watching television?
No. The pizza today was extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Whoa.
We have surpassed the Italians.
Whoa. No, you can call me Alfonso. Yeah, Pagliacci. Yeah, Hare Krishna. Sure.
Is Krishna our ever well-wisher even if we experience extreme suffering?
No, your question should be, why do we experience extreme suffering? Because we're not accepting someone as a teacher who knows Krishna consciousness and who can answer not your questions after your suffering, but answer your questions to avoid suffering. You understand? Suffering is a message from God that you have made a mistake. It's a message, right? So if you want to avoid it, then you come regularly and hear the classes. And the idea about hearing a class is you can ask a question right away. If you read the book, you can misunderstand many things. If you hear the class, you can ask questions to clear any of your doubts. So you're suffering because of mistakes that you're making, that you made already in your past life, and maybe mistakes that you're making now. So the mistakes, there are 4 major mistakes. Meat eating, meat, fish, eggs, chicken, all that junk. Gambling and speculation. Speculation means someone asks you a question, you don't know what the answer is, you make up something. Just like, it all started with a big bang. We all come from monkeys. And there's gender neutrality. You can be anything you want or nothing. And there's no God. And when you die, everything is over. That's enough to ruin your life, those conclusions. In fact, there's no God, and when you die, it's all over. That's enough to ruin your life right there. But you add on to that, you pile on to that, we come from monkeys, and gender neutrality, and critical race theory, and this theory, and that theory, Big Bang, and Big Bum, and whatever. You're ruined. So to get rid of all those misconceptions, you have to hear. Bhagavad Gita is God speaking about himself. Who else can be a greater authority than God speaking about himself? It's not Gandhi explaining who God is, or not this minister or this priest explaining who God is. It's God talking about himself and answering many, many questions asked of him by his devotee Arjuna. So this is the greatest discussion that's ever taken place in the world, and it answers all questions. It answers all. Everything is in this one book. And all you have to do is be an expert of one book like this, and you have full knowledge. You will not be cheated in life anymore. So that's my answer. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Is that your question? No. No?
I wanted to ask what's the, so I see that association of devotees is of prime importance, like coming to the class. I wanted to ask what's the importance of relationships in devotion?
It's dadadi pratigrinanti guyam akyati prichyati bhukte bhukta jayate chaiva sadvida pritilakshanam. It's 6 ways of expressing love. That's what we do in this temple. Giving and receiving prasad, or gifts, right? Giving or receiving gifts, giving or receiving prasad, and giving and receiving endearing statements about Krishna. So there's 6 ways of expressing our love. So if you come to the temple, that's what we do. We give and we receive prasad. We give gifts and we receive gifts. We speak about Krishna and we hear about Krishna. And that inspires us to be good people. We're not saying, strap these bombs and blow up Bellevue Mall. And you'll go back to Jannat, you'll go back to heaven, you'll have 72 virgins. So one mom was giving a lecture, and a Muslim lady raised her hand and said, okay, I got it. The men get 72 virgins. What do we get? She's saying, what do we get? What do women get? You know. He said, well, sister, he said, there's no information in the Quran about that, but don't worry, we'll take care of you. Yeah, we'll take care of you. You'll be one of the 72. So you see, it's all nonsense. It's all complete nonsense. Even the preachers, most of them are nonsense. You see, just like a Satguru, he says, why are you reading an old book when I am here right now? He meant, why are you reading Bhagavad Gita? It's an old book, 5,000 years old. You don't have to read an old book. I'm here right now. I can answer all your questions. You see, so that's the first thing that the cheaters do. They minimize the Shastra and they actualize themselves. That's their trick. Right? And dumbbells, they accept it. Because Hindus know very little of their own religion. And they're not allowed to know. In the Hindi schools, they're not allowed to teach religion. But yet, in the madrasa, all they do is teach religion. In the Christian church, all they do is teach religion, right? But if you're in a Hindi school, you're not allowed to hear about God. Now, you should ask a question. How did that happen in Bharat, the land of Dharma? It's because of the British, number one, and because of 1,000 years living under the Muslims, and then 150 years living under the British. They ruined the whole educational system. See? But they can teach about God. So the deck is stacked against the Hindus. That's why you come here, you can learn more here than you can in India now about Sanatan Dharma.
That was one thing that when I moved there, somehow Bhakti was more approachable, because back home, there's more judgment and there's more, there are more obstacles than.
No, back home they say, why are you not eating meat? Are you sick? Yeah, the Hindus are saying that to the other Hindus. Even here, one of our young boys was going to school here, and the Hindu kids, boys in the school, they said, "How come you're not eating meat?" He said, "No, I don't want to eat it." "No, you don't know how good it is." They were trying to convince him to eat meat, and then he told his mom and dad, and he said, "I don't want to go to that school." He said, "The American kids are not telling me to do it. The Hindu kids are telling me to do it." This is a serious problem. Okay, so there's a good side to it all. Simply chant Hare Krishna, associate with devotees, dance in the kirtan, take prasadam to your full satisfaction, come with us on Harinam Sankirtan, where this Saturday we're going to have 300, 400, 500 people. We're going to have a massive... just keep coming to the temple, associating with devotees, and get involved in devotional service. And it'll purify all those misconceptions. Okay? Haribol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Every morning, 6:15, we have class till 7:15. And if you miss it, that's okay. It's on the YouTube. So you cannot miss the class if you really want to hear it. Every day. And if you want to hear all the previous classes, there's hundreds of them. All right? Because we've been doing this every day for more than 4 years now at 6:15 in the morning. So right now, what time is it? 9 o'clock? So you should immediately run home as fast as you can and get into bed before 10 o'clock. Because after 10 o'clock, you'll turn into a pumpkin. All the demons come out after 10 o'clock. Take rest and wake up early. Take a shower, start chanting Hare Krishna, and then be here or be nowhere. There's Mangal Arati starts 5:30, and class is 6:15. Right? And you'll get healthy, and you'll get inspired. And then you can face the world without being intimidated. Hare Krishna. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai.